In this video, I'm going to be building a massive Jurassic Park in LEGO, featuring a bunch of different enclosures, some exciting attractions, and the dinosaurs will get progressively more dangerous throughout the video. To start out the park, we'll need to build an entrance. Right in the middle will be the main gate, which has torches on the side, and finishing up the top with a Jurassic sign. Out in front will be the ticket stands and some workers to greet visitors. Let's wrap up the entrance with a turnstile and some fences along the side. Inside will be a bunch of signs and this custom map to help guests locate their favorite dinos. Now that the entrance is complete, we can place it down in this empty field, officially marking the start of the park. Let's move on to the first enclosure, which will be for the Triceratops, a large herbivore with big horns, but even larger turds. We should probably get started on the actual enclosure, which will have wired fences going all the way around. There will also be a ton of plants all over the place for the Triceratops to snack on. Speaking of which, let's get one added inside. And in the corner, her baby. Back outside, there's a screen with information about the dino, and so guests can rest, some benches spread around. To clearly mark the enclosure, there will need to be a sign. Thankfully, inside this Jurassic Park tin, there's a bunch of useful stickers, including one for the Triceratops, which can be stuck right on and attached onto the fence. And that marks the completion of the first enclosure. But before we move on, let's also add in a dino petting zoo. In the movies, this attraction allows guests to get a closer look at some of the smaller dinos. The first step is to add in a bunch of sand and a fence to prevent any from running off. The first dino here will be a baby Triceratops, which kids can ride around. On the other side, a barrel full of food. And lastly, with a brush, you can scratch the back of this small ankylosaurus. Oh, and let's not forget another sign. Alright, that's the first two enclosures done, and they can be added in right next to the entrance. Up next will be the biggest section in the entire park, the Herbivore Valley, which will have a ton of different species living together peacefully. Let's begin with covering the entire area with a bunch of grass, and so the dinos can drink, a small lake in the corner. Before I forget, we'll also need fences going around the entire valley. On the ground there will be a ton of different plants with berries and fruits growing on them, which will make a tasty snack for this adult ankylosaurus. Since this enclosure is so massive, there will be plenty of room for the Gallimimus. However, not all dinos will be able to reach the ground for food, so for the taller ones, there will need to be plenty of trees, which can all be added in, along with the Brachiosaurus, who can now enjoy some tasty leaves. One of the coolest attractions we've ever seen in a Jurassic Park is the Gyrosphere ride, allowing guests to drive right alongside the dinos, and it would be the perfect inclusion to finish off the Herbivore Valley. The Gyrosphere ride will need a main building to store the attraction before taking off. On the inside will be a park ranger, and it's also the starting point for the tour. Then, the gate can be lowered, and off you go. Just make sure to give the dinos their personal space. Around the side of the enclosure, let's continue the path, which is a great spot for an information plaque, and for the entrance of the ride, a sign. Since this ride is going to be quite popular, I'm sure there's also going to be massive lines. But anyway, the Herbivore Valley is now complete and the park is really starting to come together. However, up to this point, we've only added enclosures for friendly dinosaurs, so I think it's time to introduce some more dangerous ones, like the Dilophosaurus. Their preferred habitat is a jungle, so we'll really need to stuff a bunch of plants in here, and to provide some shade, a couple of trees. Since the Dilophosauruses eat meat instead of plants, they will need a feeder, and well, this poor goat is on the menu, and now we can add two of them into their new enclosure. Time to place down these upgraded walls, which feature very thick glass that keeps our guests safe, and there's still plenty of visibility to see the dinos inside. With the Dilophosaurus enclosure complete, we can now go ahead and place it down right by the entrance. Now it's time to move on to the most popular dinosaur we'll have, the Tyrannosaurus Rex, which does have a reputation for breaking out of Jurassic Park and Jurassic World, so we'll need to be extra careful. The T-Rex would have lived in a totally different environment than our previous dinosaurs, and that's why this enclosure will be themed after North American forests. For the plants, there will be a mix of ferns and other bushes you'd see, and to really finish the forest, a bunch of tall pine trees. Like I've said before, having a T-Rex is quite a big risk, so these will be the biggest and strongest walls to this point, and it looks very secure and I'm confident we can put the T-Rex inside. To feed her, we will go ahead and mount this crane on the side, which can then lower down a cow. These feeding sessions are going to be quite popular, and so everybody can actually see, let's add in a second viewing platform. And let's not forget the sign. Alright, great, now everybody can see inside. If you're enjoying the video so far, consider subscribing, or I might end up feeding you to the T-Rex. Anyways, the enclosure is now complete and we can go ahead and connect it with the rest of the park. And if you thought the T-Rex was cool, just wait until later when I make a high security section for only the most dangerous dinosaurs. Another really popular carnivore we'll need to add in the park is the Velociraptor. These guys basically appear in every movie and are even trained by Owen Grady at Jurassic World. For the environment in their paddock, I've chosen to do a desert so there's plenty of sand on the ground. But since raptors like to ambush prey, we'll also need to have some plants for them to hide behind. In the Jurassic World movie, we see the raptor enclosure as this massive octagon, with the walkway suspended over the cage for workers to move across. So in my park, I'll do something similar instead of a window to look through. Alright, I think these walls are high enough, but we should definitely add in some safety railings. We don't want anybody falling in. And to actually get on top, there will be steps leading all the way up. Alright, now would be a good time to add in the raptors underneath. This paddock looks just like the one in the movies and still allows Owen to train his Velociraptor pack. And we can now go ahead and slide it in right across from the T-Rex enclosure. Up to this point, the park has 4 carnivores and 5 herbivores, but not a single flying dinosaur, so to mix it up a bit, we'll make an aviary for the pterodactyl. In its enclosure, we'll make sure there's water with plenty of fish inside, since that's what they like to eat. Around the edges for the walls will be round panels with a good amount of windows for the guests to look inside. I think the aviary is ready for the pterodactyl, but so it doesn't fly off and hurt any of our guests, we'll need a roof, which does a great job at stopping any breakout attempt. And we'll need a pop on a sign so guests can easily locate the enclosure, since it'll be positioned right behind the Dilophosaurus and T-Rex paddock. All the dinos we've added so far have been cool, but it's time to take the park to the next level with a genetic hybrid, the Indominus Rex. This dino single-handedly took down Jurassic World, so I'll need to make this the most secure enclosure in the entire park, which means these walls are super tall and made out of solid concrete. For the habitat on the inside, the Indominus is used to a warm jungle climate, so there will be some water and a bunch of jungle plants. I think we are now ready to welcome the most dangerous dino into its enclosure, but let's quickly block off the front with even bigger walls, which are reinforced by steel support beams. I have a feeling we're going to need them. At this point, there's no way for guests to know what's inside, so we'll need to add in some signs on the wall. Alright, that's much better. Even the sticker is kinda scary. So our more daring visitors can see the dino, we'll need to make some viewing galleries, on which there's plenty of seats for all of our guests. And these can go right into place on each side of the paddock. I mean, you are so close you can basically feed it. But so the Indominus doesn't eat anybody, we'll need to station some security up here, because I really don't want to get sued. And that's the Indominus Rex enclosure complete. I think it would have a hard time breaking out of here, but anyways, let's get it placed down with the rest of the park. With all these deadly dinos so close together, we are going to need the asset control unit. At Jurassic World, they stopped dinos from breaking out and attacking visitors. Obviously, they didn't do the best job, but let's hope they've learned from last time. Let's start off with the first floor, which on the inside has a bunch of useful equipment, like weapon storage, that has tranq rifles and stun rods. There's also this rack with plenty of ammo and gear, which allows the guards to quickly get ready for action. And that's the armory complete, but there's still more that needs to be inside, so here's the second floor. And outside the roof for a parking spot, where the ACU's truck can be backed into place. On the inside will be the control room, which is where the staff can keep an eye on all the park's equipment so everything runs smoothly. Alright, it's done. With the ACU headquarters up and running, it'll allow us to add even more dangerous dinosaurs later on. At this point, guests will be having such a good time that they'll want a souvenir, and the best place to get some is the gift shop, which will be brightly colored and have some toy boxes on the roof to help the store stand out. And up front, there are even some big windows to show off new products. On the inside, we will have a full shelf of Lego sets, a vintage Jurassic Park outfit, a table full of dino eggs, and of course a counter to check out any items you plan on buying. This gift shop is full of cool stuff, but at this point visitors are surely getting hungry. So next door will be the restaurant, which will make the perfect dinner spot at the park. On the inside, there's plenty of room to sit down and enjoy your meal. I'm sure this main street will be a big hit with our guests for all their shopping and eating needs, and it fits perfectly into place next to the ACU headquarters. The park is filling up quickly, but there's still a massive open space, which will be the perfect spot for the Mosasaur Lagoon. Our guests can see action-packed live feedings. To fit the Mosasaur, this is going to have to be a massive lagoon. On the inside, there are large sections of coral reef filled with all sorts of colorful plants and fish. To prevent everything from flowing out, there will need to be walls with plenty of glass surrounding the entire area. And just in case a visitor falls in, there's a flotation device right here. This park will also have live feedings, so on this wire will be a tasty shark. The lagoon is looking great so far, but we should also add an area for the guests to enjoy the show. And once everybody is seated, the platform can be lowered down to give a better view from underwater. Okay, with that done, we are ready to welcome in the Mosasaur. I already know these feedings are going to be super popular, and with the lagoon added in, we can finally move on to the high security section. This will house the most dangerous dinosaurs in the entire park, and the first inclusion will be the Giganotosaurus, which is actually the largest carnivore to ever walk the earth. So yeah, this guy will definitely need a maximum security enclosure. Even though this dino is quite dangerous, the enclosure still has to look nice, so the ground will be covered with patches of grass and a small lake. To make this feel more like its natural habitat, there will be a bunch of plants all over, and with those done, we can also place down some bigger trees. This definitely looks nice, but the most important part remains the security, so let's begin on the wall, which is absolutely massive. And it even features a slippery edge, so the Giganotosaurus can't climb out. Lining the top of the wall will be these turrets, which can rotate at any angle to prevent an escape. In the middle is the control tower. On top, there is a guard that can control the turrets, and so he can see the entire enclosure, he can spin his chair. With those security measures in place, the Giganotosaurus can be led inside. And as one last upgrade, there will be several support beams attached to the walls to make them even stronger. Alright, that should do it. Let's go ahead and add this enclosure into place and move on to another risky dinosaur, the Spinosaurus, which is strong enough to battle a T-Rex, but also fast enough to keep up and attack boats. Since the Spino can thrive on both land and sea, its enclosure will have a deep body of water for it to swim around, and a separate section above the water that is covered with a ton of jungle plants. And so the Spino can't escape, there will also be a tall wall surrounding the entire thing. With this unique layout, the Spino can stay on land or enjoy the deep end. And for some added security, out front there will be a squad of guards patrolling at all times. Alright, that's the Spinosaurus enclosure complete. I recently put out a community post asking my subscribers which dinosaur was the most dangerous, and over 65% of people said the Indoraptor, and I agree, since it was engineered by Dr. Wu to be even more deadly than the Indominus Rex. I could use some help with this enclosure, so I called upon my friend Firebird Bricks, since he's got some experience building dangerous dinosaurs too, so I'll actually let him walk you through this section of the build.
Alright, to start off, we went ahead and covered the entire ground with sand, since this is going to be a desert-themed enclosure. Next, we continued by adding in a bunch of dead bushes since we didn't want the inside to be completely empty. Surrounding the sides of the entire enclosure are walls that have built-in supports so they can hold up against attacks. At the very top, we also included some walkways that will help prevent the dino from climbing out. The enclosure is really coming along, so now would be a good time to add in the Indoraptor. Since it's so dangerous, I suggested we add in tranq rifles and grenade launchers mounted on the sides, along with a super powerful minigun in the middle. Since I really didn't want the Indoraptor to escape, we also stationed a whole unit of guards at the top of the wall. Now that the enclosure's finished, I'll pass the mic back to Yako since we added even more security measures.
While building, Caleb and I had an idea for a bunker, where guests can shelter in case any dinos escape. Now we can cover this entire area with tiles and continue the path. In the corner will be a helipad, which makes a perfect landing spot. And lastly, to really make this the most secure section of the park, we added in this watchtower with a sniper stationed on top. With that done, we can now connect this section with the rest of the high security enclosures, officially marking the completion of the entire Jurassic Park, which has a grand total of 18 dinos and 5 attractions. Let me know in the comments down below whatever dinosaurs you would have added in here. Also, if you enjoyed, consider watching one of my other Jurassic Park videos, and thanks for watching.